Welcome to the deep dive, where we take your sources and really dig into them for those key insights. Today, we're tackling something really fundamental for instrument flying: the mindset. Our source is the mindset shift, trusting the invisible. And this is, well, it's crucial if you're maybe working on your ESA basic instrument rating or, just want to get better at IFR in your Cessna.
Absolutely. Spot on. It's this idea that, look, instrument flying,
Mm.
it's not just about knowing the procedures or being good with the controls. It really demands a whole different way of thinking and planning and actually
Yeah.
flying the plane. Think about it. You're flying along perfectly fine VFR, then bam, you hit cloud.
Right. Everything just disappears outside.
Exactly. And that switch, that sudden need to rely only on what's inside the cockpit, that's the core of this mindset shift we're talking about.
Okay, so the source digs into this. It says when the horizon disappears and the world outside becomes an indistinct blur. It sounds pretty intense. How do we, find our feet when that happens?
Well, the key thing the source points out is the only certainty lies within the cockpit. That's it. That's your reality now. You literally have to ignore what your body might be screaming at you, those visual cues you're used to, and just, well, trust the instruments. So what this means in the cockpit, it means a constant scan, disciplined, and just believing those dials. Examiners look for proficiency, sure, but what really keeps you safe up there is that deep, ingrained trust.
Okay, building that certainty. How? The source mentions it's built on knowledge, discipline, and trust. Trust in the instruments, the training, your own judgment. Sounds like the recipe for the BIR.
It pretty much is.
Yeah.
But how do you, as a GA pilot learning this stuff, actually cultivate that? Let's break it down. First, knowledge.
Right, not just memorizing for the test.
No, exactly. It's
FBI.
understanding the why. Like, why does the attitude indicator show what it does? What are its limits? What happens if the pitot tube gets blocked? It's knowing how these things work and how they can fail that actually lets you trust them. A good tip for the test and for flying. Just keep asking why. Understand the guts of it.
Makes sense. Okay, then, discipline. That sounds like hard work.
It is. It's practice. Repetition is forcing yourself to stick to your procedures, stick to your scan pattern, especially when it feels weird or wrong. Your inner ear might be telling you you're turning, but the instruments say level. Discipline is consciously overriding that feeling. It's about training your eyes to constantly move across that six-pack, methodically, not just glancing when you feel like it. Think non-precision approach in murky weather. You can't afford to look away.
And that leads to the big one, trust. That sounds psychologically tough.
It really is the Everest, yeah. Because your own senses can lie to you profoundly. Like that feeling of turning in a cloud, your body screams turn, but the AI says wings level. Trust is actively choosing in that moment to believe the instrument over your own body.
Mhm.
It's almost like unlearning a lifetime of relying on vision. It's not just passive belief. It's building this internal compass, this mental model where you know what the plane is doing based purely on those readings, even with zero outside reference.
Wow. So it's really a whole system. It's not just plotting a course. The source says it's not just about where you're going, it's about how you think, plan, and fly your way there. What's the takeaway for someone learning?
It hammers home that IFR is a process,
Mm.
a very deliberate one. You need to be proactive, you need to anticipate, you need to constantly cross-check and verify. For you and your Cessna, just knowing where O'Hare is isn't enough. You've got to master the system of getting there safely, entirely within that cockpit world, reducing that mental workload because the mindset is already there.
This has been a fascinating deep dive. Really highlights that instrument flying is so much more than just the technical side. It's a fundamental shift in perception.
Absolutely. I think the main takeaway, whether you're doing the BIR or just want to be a safer IFR pilot, is building that rock-solid certainty in the cockpit. And that comes from, well, knowledge, discipline, and that hard-earned trust
Yeah.
in the gauges, in your training, and ultimately in your own ability to put it all together.
So, thinking about this mindset shift, the knowledge, the discipline, the trust for you listening as you prepare or just practice, which one of those feels like it's going to need the most work? Where's your personal Everest? And maybe how could you start chipping away at it on your very next flight?